I could give you a long list of reasons why I would never go back into the field of education, whether that's as a teacher or as an administrator. But today I'm only going to tell you guys about my top 5 reasons. I don't know if I'm just unlucky or if this is something that is just common due to the fact that the field of education is very experimental, but I have never worked in an environment where we had a set order of operations or systems that were actually reliable. No matter where I worked, no matter what position I filled, we always were lacking something, whether that was an adequate operational plan or streamlined systems that were organized. And so, of course, when you're working under conditions like that, sometimes it really poses a problem for the entire group because certain things happen. For an example, you might have lapses in communications because without things being streamlined, everyone may be on different pages, right? So there may be lapses in communication, there may be lapses in efficiency. And so these are the things that really made it hard for me to ever say, hey, this is a great environment for not only myself, but also for children and families. Okay, so that leads me into my second point. Now, anytime there's a lack in streamlined systems or in an adequate operational plan, it's going to have a direct impact on the school learning climate. Now, we all know that school learning climates that are not positive are draining for everyone. Teachers, administrators, students, and parents. We don't want that, but usually that is what we create because we're not planning in advance and we're not making sure that we're putting ourselves in a position to be responsive as opposed to reactive. Now, when you're in the field of education, one thing you always have to expect is to put out fires. There's always something that's going to happen. There's always going to be a split decision that you're going to have to make. Now, one thing I can say is that when you have your operational plan in place and when you have streamlined systems in place, it is much easier to make informed decisions when you have to put out fires because you're not being reactive. You're more so being responsive because you have complete control over everything else that falls under you. You're just putting out this one fire. Now, when you don't have that set up, it's a lot more difficult for you to make informed decisions in those moments because you're all over the place. And so before you even are able to make a decision, you have to analyze it. And sometimes you can get stuck there. You can get analysis paralysis, and that can impact the efficiency of the whole entire group. We also got to remember that when culture and climate are impacted, that means that the interactions between the people that have to carry out the day-to-day are going to be impacted. And so sometimes that could be very stressful. Not only that, but that can contribute to a lack of unity within the whole entire group. Because again, if we are having a bunch of contentious moments with each other, then that is going to really impact our culture and our climate and make the space that we're occupying a really hostile environment. So as you can see, those two things go hand in hand. And those two things also impact my third thing, okay? Now, quality. I am someone who went into the field of education because I wanted to provide high quality instruction and I also wanted to give students the best opportunities. But it's so frustrating when that is your approach and that is your agenda pretty much, but you can't do that because you're serving on a team where the culture and climate is impacted due to the fact that there are no streamlined systems in place and there are no operational plans in place. And I don't care what anyone says. I know that the field of education is highly experimental. I do. I know that. However, I also know that you cannot have any level of high quality instruction or high quality programming if there are lapses in communication and if there are no organized systems. There's no way that can happen. Now, my fourth reason why is leadership. Now, I'm not going to go too heavy in on the leaders because leadership is a very, very, very big responsibility. And sometimes you really don't know what you don't know when you're in a leadership position. One thing I will say, though, is that when leaders are in a position and they have lack of provision and insight, it does impact the team, right? Also, when leaders have like somewhat of a superiority complex, it can really, really, really damage interactions between them and the staff that they have. I also came in contact with some leaders that, they were really innovative, but a lot of times they may have failed to see the big picture. And sometimes that does really impact your team, because again, if you are failing to see the big picture, then your decision making is not always going to be as credible as you think it is. I've also noticed that leaders that fit into that category usually struggle with delegation and collaboration. Those are things that they aren't really sure how to approach because they haven't yet learned how to kind of let up some of that control. One of the biggest hacks for leaders to be able to let up some of that control is to put an operational plan in place and to streamline systems. But again, many people miss that mark. And so they find themselves in positions where they tend to micromanage others, and it's really not intentional. It's just due to the fact that they're uncertain, and they may also be a little bit insecure about the way that the entire team is working, due to the fact, again, that everyone is not on the same page, and they know it. I've also come in contact with leaders who may have fumbled accountability or fumbled their chance to take accountability because they were more so focused on establishing their authority than on establishing an operational plan or systems that can really advance the team and also ensure efficiency. And my fifth reason, of course, is burnout. If you have experienced 1 through 4, of course, 5 is going to come next. The burnout is going to come next because, again, when systems aren't in place, when there's no operational plan, when the culture and climate of the environment is compromised, and then when leadership and accountability is, a little fuzzy, those things are going to create burnout, not only for the staff, but also for the teachers and the students involved. And to be honest, I have never been in a position where all 5 of those things weren't a factor. Never. And so it makes me wonder, like, wow, is this something that is happening everywhere? And if so, what's going to be done about it? I offer services to leaders who would like to eliminate the chances of falling into any of those 5 pitfalls. If you want your team to thrive, and if you want to make sure that your team is operating at an optimal level, definitely reach out to me. If you're a leader who wants to eliminate your team's chances of being impacted by any of those 5 factors, I suggest the following services: systemic organization and enhancement, and leadership support and relational trust building.